Is it possible to build your entire Power BI report with just your keyboard? And is it actually quicker? Well, there's only one way to figure that out. In a lot of programs like Excel, I'm using many shortcuts because it makes me so much quicker. However, somehow in Power BI, I'm only using shortcuts really when I'm writing DAX, but I'm talking here about shortcuts that you need to build entire Power BI reports, like inserting and formatting charts, switching to the modeling pane and setting up relationships between tables, inserting new tables, all of those shortcuts. How can I do that with just using the keyboard and not the mouse? Well, and does it actually make sense? Is it quicker? And how convenient is it to do that in Power BI? Well, there's only one way to figure out if it's a good idea to, well, just rely on your keyboard when building Power BI reports. Let's head over to Power BI and let's first get an overview of the shortcuts that are available, which you can do by hitting the question mark key. Now, this gives us an overview of the most important shortcuts. For example, to switch between different sections in the Power BI window, you can do that with Control F6. If you want to go backwards, then you also need to hold the Shift key, so Control Shift F6. Now you see there are quite many, there's a long list, and if we use the arrow keys or page up and down, no, doesn't go down. Okay, I need to get my mouse already. All right, so let's move down. You see, we have different shortcuts for page navigation. When you're on the visual, like I'll Shift F10, all right. Slicer accessibility, and here we have a link that links to even more shortcuts. And of course, at the beginning, using shortcuts will always be a little bit slower than just relying on your mouse. It's just over time, it might pay off. Okay, now let's go to Power BI and let's start building something. I'm going to hit the escape key. Okay, at least that closes that window. And I want to insert some sample data. Now for that, we need to, well, get to the use sample data there in the middle. Now we know how to switch between different sections. That is Control F6. Okay, now you see, I'm now moving between different sections. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to see where you are. With the Tab key, you can then go up and down between the buttons in that section. And then with Shift Tab, we can go backwards. Okay, now I need to be in the middle. So I'm going to hit Control F6 once more. And then with the arrow keys or with the Tab key, I can go to Use Sample Data, press Enter. Now, over here, I want to load sample data, tap, tap, Enter. And now we have to say, what do we want to have from the source? So tap, 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 tap. Now I'm on the folder, and then with the arrow keys, we can go down. Okay, now I want to have a preview. Now with the spacebar, we get the item selected. Also later, if you go in the visual and you want to select a certain data point with the spacebar, you can do that. Okay, now we can just hit enter, or by pressing tab, you see how you go over the different buttons, although the load button is already dark green, and therefore it's difficult to see if it's selected. So you see now I'm on transform data, but I want to go back. So Shift tab and brings me back to load and enter. All right, so the data is loaded. I can see it there in my data pane. However, if I want to see the actual data in the data view, then, well, we have to use Control F6 again to select the section with the buttons on the left-hand side. And then with the Tab key, you see we can go to the next button, the table view, press enter, and we go there. Now, if you're thinking Control F6 is not the most convenient one to switch between the different sections because you need it so many times, well, it is possible to remap the shortcut keys to something that's more convenient for you. I will show you later how to do that. All right, so you see over here, we can look at the table. If we want to go back, then we just need to make sure that we have the section on the left selected again, and then go back to the report view. Okay, now let's build something. I want to insert a chart. So I want to go to the ribbon, click on Insert. Now to access anything from the ribbon, just like in Excel, you can hit the Alt key. Now, if you are on the November 25 version, well, you're out of luck already because there seems to be a bug in the November 25 version that doesn't allow you to access the ribbon using the Alt key. All right, now, so I'm on the October 25 version. Now, I'm going to hit I, Insert, and now I want to have a visual, so I'm going to go to VG. Okay, and then I can choose the visual that I want, stack bar chart. Okay, and there you go. Now we can position it somewhere else on the page, so by using the arrow keys, but this is very slow. But if you hold the Shift key, you see, it goes much quicker. Okay, so once you have it where you want it to be, then you can also adjust the size of it by holding the Control and the Shift key, and then, for example, arrow to the left, and you see that makes it less wide. And Control Shift down would make it less high. And Control Shift to the right, it doesn't work. Okay, so again, a little bit clunky here. Now it's set up in PowerBI. Okay, good. But I want to add some data. Now you can see I have on object formatting turned on. If you don't, then you can just turn it on by going to Settings, Preview Options, and turn on object formatting. Now, I want to add some data to the visual on the Y and the X axis. So let's see what happens if I press Tab. Then you see the visual is selected. If I press Tab again, nothing. If I go over here to the right, well, that on object formatting window pops up, but I'm not able to access it. So if I press Escape, and then you see that little build panel icon is selected, press enter, reopen it basically. Now I'm kind of inside of that window. Also feels a bit clunky, right? Over here we have different chart types that we can switch to. Okay, so that's all fine. I just use Tab to go to the next fields. And over here on the Y-axis, I want to add some data. Press enter. Now, what do I want? I want to have country. All right, tap, tap, enter. Perfect. And then we want to go back. So we go to the closing button. Okay, and we tap our way to the X-axis where we want to add sales. Okay, so over here, this experience is quite okay, perfect. And then with Escape, we can just close these windows. Nice. All right, and then I want to change the formatting. You see, then we just use the arrow keys to go there and the tab keys. That's kind of like your magic combination. And going back, Shift, Tab, I think those really help you when you're just using the keyboard. Now over here, I want to go to more options. That opens the formatting window. When I press Tab now, nothing happens. Kind of weird that it doesn't automatically activate that formatting pane on the right-hand side. So let's try that again. And now you saw it blinks. Why do I have to do it 2 times? A bit clunky, huh? All right, so now I can tap my way through the different formatting options. Again, adjust size and style, stuff like this. But let's focus maybe on the bar colors. So I go here to bars. Okay, can use my arrow keys to jump to a different group or tab key to go inside of that group. And then over here, you see with the arrow keys, I can extend that drop down, or with tab, I can just go to the next formatting element like color. Okay, so over here, you see tab, tab. Okay, what section do you want to have? Let's stay on these colors. Let's make it orange. Boom. Perfect. Now, if I also want to have less space between the bars, tap, 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 go to layout. And then over here, we put in a percentage, for example, 40% to have a little bit more space there in between. Now, if I would like to go back to one of the formatting options at the top, Shift, Tab, then I close maybe those sections, go up. So we have to go to the X-axis, and then over here, I want to have the title off. Okay, this is not too bad. This is quite okay to do this with the keyboard. But now I want to, well, maybe insert another chart. Okay, so to insert another chart, we have to, well, go again to insert or somehow access the builds panel. Now, what I noticed is if I want to have that builds panel there on the right-hand side and I'm using F6, right? Then you see I'm toggling between all of the different sections. But when we then get to the builds panel, it skips it. Somehow it doesn't go into that one. I don't know how it's programmed, but it skips the builds panel there. So that's a bit inconvenient, and I don't know why that is happening. So if I want to insert a new chart, well, let's then do it over the ribbon, right? So Alt key, insert. Now a new chart, so not VG, because that probably would change the selected one. So NV, all right. And then over here, let's just go for card visual. Now I am using tab over here to expand that. Also here, I would expect this on object formatting window to automatically expand. However, you see if I reopen it again, oh no, it's just a little bit too small. Sometimes it shows small, sometimes it extends. It's a little bit annoying. So over here, I'm just going to tap my way through it and then look for the chart that I want. Let's go and look for the new card visual. Not super quick. So over here, found it. Press enter. Okay. Tap to go out of it. Tap to go out of it again. And now we can add something on values. Let's also go for the sales. And there we are. Okay, good. Now, this is fine. So not that much quicker. You see now when I reopen it, it nicely extends. I have more space. I can see the whole thing, which would have been nice to have straight away. No? So this is okay, and once you get used to it, now let's say I want to format what we have in the background, the canvas page, give it a darker grayish color. Okay, then we have to, well, first close kind of that on object formatting. You see now we are on the visual. However, that button stays selected even though I'm pressing escape. So when I press tab, now I have the canvas selected. So press enter, tab, then it goes into that on object formatting again. Okay, now that's a little bit weird. So tab. Okay, now I have the canvas selected. All right, and I want to go to formatting. Now the formatting is still for that visual. That's also selected. A bit confusing. But what you can do is Shift F10, and then we get this little pop-up window over here. It's also later relevant when a specific visual is selected. And then here we can say that we want to, well, format the canvas. Okay. Now I would expect the canvas formatting to be selected already. Press tab and it jumps back to that visual from before. Okay. Now you see it's a little bit inconvenient, so that I have to now press Shift F10, format canvas, and then with F6, I go over there to the formatting options and then tap my way to the settings that I want to change. In this case, the canvas background. Select the color, maybe that's gray, and let's apply a different transparency. Let's go for 80%. Also doable, but could be better, right? Okay, all of this inserting visuals, formatting visuals is quite okay. However, now I want to insert maybe a new table and then set up a relationship. Is that doable? And does it work quickly? Now, if I would insert a table, then I would also want to see what's inside of the table. So let's switch first to the data pane. So over here, you see I'm pressing Control F6 until I'm in the right section again. Also, that sometimes takes a bit long. So over here, table view. Now I want to insert a new table. So I want to access the ribbon options, JT, Table Tools, New Table, NT. Okay, and then Control Plus to zoom in. This is going to be dim date equal to, let's go for a short one, calendar auto. Now, when it comes to DAX, there are a lot of useful shortcuts. Just check them out. There it's definitely worth it. Okay, so over here, that generates the dim date table. All good. I'm looking at my column. Perfect. Now I want to set up the relationship from dim date to financials. Okay, so again, F6 to go to the section on the right, and then over here use tab key model to go to the modeling view. Over here, if I would now press tab, well, I'm still in that section on the left, so I have to first press Control F6 to go into the middle part. Then with tab, I can go in between the different tables. Now, if I want to access the properties in data pane, there on the right-hand side, I just Control F6 again and goes there. All right, so this is quite okay. Now I'm just wondering how to set up the relationship. For that, probably I would have to go to the modeling view. So Control F6 once more, tab, model. Then over here, we can use tab to go down, because we want to have, and also the arrow keys, we want to have a relationship. Over here to access these little 3 dots, the more options, well, if I press enter, nothing happens. Okay, so that's not the one. Here, you need to know the shortcut. So let me just go there again. And that is Shift F10. So Shift F10, you see, really important one because we also used it before and we will use it again also for the visuals. So here we can set up a new relationship, and then we can switch to the properties window. Well, I would not do Control F6, but Control F6, Control Shift F6, right? Because then you go backwards, all right? Then here for the properties, we can say with the tab key and with the enter key, we can say we want to have a relationship that goes from dim date, date column, cardinality 1 to many, to the financials table. Okay, this is quite okay. And then over here, oops, I want to have date, filter direction, single. Okay, somehow this goes through it in a very structured way. Normally I would just drag and drop. So, okay, but it works. Okay, you can also, like open the relationship editor. All good. Okay, so select direction. Okay, apply changes. Perfect. Okay, and the relationship is there. Okay, not too bad. We can go back to that main canvas, select the financials table, and then move it down. Over here, when I do Shift, move down, it just resizes the table. So this could be a little bit quicker. If you have many tables that you have to move around, this takes a little bit too long, pixel by pixel, but it works. Okay, so now that we have a relationship, we can go back to the report view. If we want to insert a new chart, then we can do it like before, Alt-I insert, and then V for new visual again. And then over here, we are going to select the line chart. Okay, perfect. On the x-axis, I this time want to have from the date hierarchy. And then on the y-axis, let's use tab. There I want to have sales again. Okay, now that visualizes the sales by year, but I want it to also expand down to the quarter, the month level. Now, how can I now access those buttons that you see on the visual to expand down? Well, escape, okay. And now we keep on pressing tab, all right. The visual is selected, all right. So you see this thicker borderline is around it. Now, Shift F10, that gives me the context menu, same shortcut that we were using before. And from here we can, well, expand to next level, summarize format. So this would work, so expand to next level, perfect. And then there's another shortcut key that you can use, and that's Alt-Shift F10. And then you see you are in the header of the visual, and then you can tap your way through all of the different options to expand the table. Now, if you want to go to the data view, that would be also Alt-Shift and then 11, for example. And if you want to go back over here, escape, back to report. All right, so there are a few smaller shortcuts that are maybe, like a little bit more secondary that you learn just by doing and adding a new shortcut every day while you're trying this out. Now, as you can see, there's still quite a bit of friction if we build the whole report with just the keyboard. And especially at the beginning, it's not going to be quicker, but that's with every program when you just start to learn the keyboard shortcuts. So I think it will be a combination of using the mouse, but I'm definitely going to use the keyboard a little bit more. However, there's also from Power BI standpoint still some room for improvement to make it more convenient. Just for example, the Control F6 to switch between the different sections, right? So I feel that could be much quicker. And sometimes, like to get into the formatting options, I have to reopen certain windows and reactivate them. There's too much friction there. However, it is possible to also add your own shortcuts to Power BI, or to remap, for example, that Control F6 so that you don't need two hands, or maybe you have big hands. But for me, I would probably change this and remap it to Control and then the button that you have on the right next to your Shift key on the left-hand side. Oh, that would be much more convenient. But for that, we need to, remap it. There are many different tools that allow you to do that. Let me just show you a quick example of what you could do. So I'm using a program called AutoHotkey to remap certain shortcuts or add my own. Now, let me show you how that works, what kind of script you can give to this little program, which is totally free, right? And then how that would make your life easier in Power BI. Okay, now let me open this AutoHotkey script. And this looks maybe intimidating when you see this the first time, but most of it is actually just generated with AI, okay? And if I scroll down a little bit further, then here you see kind of the relevant stuff, right? So this remapping, just requires just a few lines over here. And here I'm setting up certain shortcut keys that I would like to open, for example, the data pane or the builds panel, the formats panel, and to easily also switch between the different buttons, views that we have on the left-hand side: report view, data view, modeling view. Okay, this looks like a long script. However, it's basically all generated with AI. You have two options. You can build it by using the coordinates. However, that's not really bulletproof. I went for a second option where you can use little images. Now, let me show you. You see, I just created a little folder with a little snapshots of all the relevant images that I want to look for in the Power BI window. And then, if I scroll up a little bit further, here I also added a bit of debugging. Let's first put it to true. Okay, let me save it. And let me run this AutoHotkey script. That's it. Now I'm gonna open Power BI and let me just close these windows. Now let's say I want to open the the data pane or the builds panel, then I can use the shortcut that I set up, which is Windows key 1, okay? Now you see these yellow boxes, this is where it's looking for that corresponding image, and then the data pane opens up, okay? Now it's slow because I'm in debugging mode. Now same on the left hand side, if I want to switch between the report view, the data view, well, I set it up in such a way that I can just press Control Tab, and you see it goes over here through the different views. Now that's much quicker than having to do Control F6 all the time, right? And then getting to that right section and then using Tab to toggle between the different buttons in that section, okay? So I think that is super, and those I really use all the time. Control F6 I replaced with Control and then the button that's to the right of the left Shift key, which I feel is a little bit more convenient if you want to jump to the properties and data pane on the right hand side, or whatever panes you have there on the right hand side of you, and you want to go to the ribbon at the top. Now that in combination with the Alt key and the shortcuts that are already available, that makes a pretty good combination. And you know, like I'm starting to use shortcuts more and more in the process. It's just these little friction points that annoy me sometimes. Now, let me just go back to that script over here, and just let's set this to false again. Now you also see that I optimized this for my screen, which is 4K screen with this scaling. Now if you open that script, which you can download, if you go to the download files, you just have to put in your email, go to the corresponding video and download it from there. It might not work straight away because, well, the pictures that I took were taken on that screen, and you know, like on your screen the resolution might be a little bit different. So if you want to use that script, well, you have to just redo these images, put them in the image folder, all right, and ask ChatGPT or Claude, whatever you're using, to just rescale over here the coordinates. That's it, okay? And then it will work. Now let me show you this in action. So I'm going to go back to Power BI, and just before that also run the script once more. I can now just use Control Tab to toggle my way through. You don't see that yellow box anymore. If I want to, let's say, open the formatting options now, I can just use Windows key 3, okay, and it opens the formatting window. Okay, so you see this is much quicker and then having to toggle between all of the different sections. Okay, so that's how I'm using shortcuts at the moment. It's still a bit of a mix, but I'm definitely using it a bit more. I hope that the Power BI team, you know, like fixes these little friction points, especially in the latest version. You know, like you should be able to enter or use the Alt key to get to the ribbon. But yeah, it's getting better and better. All right. Now, let me know your thoughts. Are you using shortcuts a lot? Well, for DAX, probably yes. But, you know, like for general report building, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Put it in the comment section below. If you want to build reports together with me, then check out my trainings over here. If you just want to watch more videos about Power BI, I have hundreds of them. Just start maybe with these two here. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.